Good morning and good afternoon to all the participants from U.S. and Japan. My name is Motohide Shiga. I'm in charge of industrial relations in JAXA. Today, I am your navigator of this exciting event. JAXA and X-Nihonbashi will hold X-Nihonbashi Global Hub '21, that is a business matching program between U.S. and Japan, with the cooperation of NASA Ames Research Center. This is a kickoff event of this program. Today's main theme will be the future of U.S.-Japan collaboration in the space business industry. The event will consist of the following elements. The first will be an input session regarding global market analysis on space industry and suggestion on importance of global partnership. The second will be a panel session by inviting people with extensive international experience from JAXA, NASA, and space-related companies from both countries. We will discuss issues and expectations for U.S.-Japan collaboration, including good practice and lessons learned from joint projects. We will start with greeting from the organizers, starting with Dr. Bookbinder. Dr. Bookbinder is Associate Center Director for Research and Technology at NASA Ames. He joined Ames in 2015, and he was responsible for major spacecraft projects such as Kepler, Sophia, and so on. In March 2020, he was tapped to lead Ames Science Directorate, which consists of over 300 scientists, engineers, and staff performing cutting-edge research in diverse fields. Dr. Bookbinder has managed space missions in cooperation with JAXA, such as Hinode X-ray telescope. So please welcome Dr. J. Bookbinder from NASA Ames.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Shiga-san. I appreciate it. Greetings from California. Good afternoon to our American colleagues, and Ohayo gozaimasu to our Japanese colleagues. I hope that everybody is safe and healthy in both the U.S. and Japan. NASA Ames is truly honored to participate in today's online event. It follows up on a very successful JAXA Ames Innovation Forum from last September. And I want to thank both JAXA and its partner, Mitsui Fudosan, for organizing this event. Much has happened in the last year since we met. Unfortunately, we're all experiencing the impacts of COVID on our current and future work. But aside from that, there have been many examples of progress that are really exciting. First and foremost, Japan signed the Artemis Accords. And NASA is extremely happy that JAXA is one of the 8 founding members of the Accords that have now been signed by 10 countries overall. Those Accords are an incredibly important foundation for our future space endeavors and will serve as a guide for how we will work together peacefully to address important questions about resource extraction, space debris mitigation, and each nation's role in space exploration in the big picture, and in detail, how we'll share scientific information and interoperability of the equipment that we send into space. Above all, the Accords lay down fundamental principles for us to venture to and explore Mars. And that's incredibly exciting. It also means that now is a good time for us to meet in venues such as today's virtual event and to share information about our exploration plans and to connect potential partners from both sides of the Pacific Ocean. We've had cooperation before. A specific example of how we're cooperating with JAXA right now is that Ames is sharing our personal robot on the International Space Station, the Astrobee, with Japan's robot in space, INTBAL. And they conduct student competitions and learn innovative ways for the robots to be intelligent assistants to supporting the astronaut crew. On a very personal note, as Shiga-san mentioned, I had the extraordinary pleasure of working closely with JAXA and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries to build the X-ray telescope on the Hinode mission that Japan launched in 2006. 15 years later, that instrument is still taking amazing images of the sun's hot outer atmosphere and studying the influence of magnetic fields. I hope to see many more scientific collaborations like that in the future. In addition to scientific collaborations, there are many areas in technology where there are effective and ongoing and productive collaborations and areas of research between the U.S. and Japan, for example, in autonomy. I hope that during the discussions that we hold today, we can identify many more ways in which we can work together. Again, I want to thank everyone for inviting Ames to participate today, especially the organizers, and I wish you all very productive discussions.
Thank you, Dr. Bookbinder, for your kind message from US. Next, Ms. Kyoko Dateki from JAXA. Ms. Dateki joined Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, former NASA, in 1997, and is currently head of Business Development and Industrial Relations Department, responsible for promoting new business to expand the industrial capability, including reach out and collaboration with new non-aerospace players. Please welcome Ms. Kyoko Dateki from JAXA.
Thank you for your introduction. I'm Kyoko Dateki, Director of Business Development and Industrial Relations Department. It's my great pleasure to meeting you here since I moved to this position 2 months ago, and now I could get today's this opportunity to say hello to you all and to join this space research and business community. I deeply appreciate your attendance to this forum. This is our third jointly organized forum with NASA Ames Research Center, and the forum leads us to have a fruitful discussion to help to build a great network between the participants. This is the reason why we seek the wonderful result again with all the efforts by NASA Ames and the JAXA colleagues. The purpose of this forum, which is also the goal for all the participants, is to know each other well, mutually share business information, and build a new and innovative business solution by your strong partnership. Because of this visual format, it might be a bit difficult to communicate comparing with physical interaction, but I believe certain people have got accustomed with this virtual format, and now we know how it works by seeing all the participants' faces and the name at a glance through the screen. So we can maximize and get benefits by using virtual environment. Our distance has become extremely closer. Maybe I can say it's no border online, and it is getting more and more easier to interact to each other. Today's forum is the first step for creating and maintaining your relationship and learning international collaboration through the wonderful panelists today. I hope all the participants would get something new today, and I would expect you all to have more aggressive discussion after the forum. Last but not least, I would like to say thank you to the staff who is supporting to realize this forum, and I especially appreciate NASA Ames and the X-Nihonbashi project team who have done an incredible job to putting this online forum together for the success of the collaboration program. Again, thank you for your attendance, and please enjoy NASA, Ames, and JAXA B2B online forum today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dateki, for your warm remarks. Next, Mr. Watanabe from Mitsui Fudosan. Mr. Watanabe joined Mitsui Fudosan in 2020 after working for Toyota Motor Corporation. He was assigned to a department related to global procurement, including project management for both Japan and the U.S. He is currently in charge of the X-Nihonbashi project. Please welcome Mr. Watanabe from Mitsui Fudosan.
Thank you, Mr. Shiga. Hello, everyone. I am Takashi Watanabe of Mitsui Fudosan Company. As the leader of X-Nihonbashi project, I'm very pleased to hold this event with NASA, Ames, and JAXA today. We have made 3-minute video to briefly explain about Project X-Nihonbashi and X-Nihonbashi Global Hub. So please take a look. I would like to explain the contents of X-Nihonbashi Global Hub and its future prospects. X-Nihonbashi is the name of project promoted by Mitsui Fudosan. Mitsui Fudosan is the largest real estate developer in Japan. This project aims to expand the space-related market by collaborating with various players from industry, government, and academia in Nihonbashi, Tokyo. And JAXA and Mitsui Fudosan will jointly launch the X-Nihonbashi Global Hub. The X-Nihonbashi Global Hub is a collaboration between JAXA and Mitsui Fudosan to provide global business matching opportunities with the aim of promoting collaboration between Japanese and overseas companies, as well as promoting the entry of Japanese non-space companies into the space field. In the first year, X-Nihonbashi Global Hub 2021, we will collaborate with NASA Ames Research Center to co-create the program. Although the impact of COVID-19 is still unpredictable, a face-to-face matching event between Japanese and U.S. companies is scheduled to be held at NASA Ames Research Center in August, in conjunction with the Space Symposium. In April, we are planning to hold a face-to-face event in Nihonbashi, Tokyo, with a particular focus on Japanese non-space companies entering the space industry. Unfortunately, it will be difficult from overseas to attend the April event, but we are looking forward to seeing you in the U.S. in August with new non-space Japanese companies. Finally, I'd like to briefly introduce places X-Nihonbashi provides to promote space business. We have co-working spaces in the Nihonbashi area in the center of Tokyo that you can freely use. We also have spaces where you can hold any space-related event for free. We hope both Japanese and international players will use these places when you come to or you are in Tokyo. That's it for my presentation. Please continue to enjoy the contents.
Thank you, Mr. Watanabe. I'm looking forward to coming progress of X-Nihonbashi project. Next is the input session. Mr. Yakame, an analyst specializing in space business at Nomura Research Institute, has summarized about current status and analysis of space business and the importance of global partnership. Please take a look at next VTR.
Hi, hello. I'm Shogo Yakame from Nomura Research Institute, which is Japanese consulting and research firm based on Tokyo. My company provides consulting and research services to Japanese government and companies in various industries. I'm in charge of space industries in my company. I have conducted a lot of research and consulting projects with Japanese government and companies. So today, I'm talking about comparison of American and Japanese space industries, and also talking about collaboration and cooperation of both two countries for future. First of all, I'm talking about the market size in space industries. So SIA reported that the global market is about 366 million in 2019. Which includes satellite services, launch services, satellite manufacturing. ground equipment, governmental budget, and commercial human space flight. The past 10 years, this global market has succeeded to expand the market. According to SIA, from 2010 to 2019, the market increased by over 30%. I believe that it is because a lot of new companies, a lot of new startups come to this market, and also the government give a lot of support program to them. So next slide shows the market size of the United States. So U.S. government reported that U.S. the market is about $158 billion in 2016. So this number is as of the 2016. So I think the current number bigger than this number. From SIA report, the market from 2016 to 2019, the market increased by about 8%. So U.S. number follow this rate. Current market is about $170 billion. So SIA also reported that U.S. has about 35% of global launch industries and over 60% of satellite industries. It's an amazing number. So no one doubt that U.S. is a global market leader in these industries. On the other hand, this slide shows the Japanese space market. Japanese market is about 11 billion. The Society of Japanese Aerospace Companies reported that the Japanese launch industries is about $850 million, and satellite industries about 1.3 billion in fiscal year of 2019. Japanese market has strongly depended on the governmental demand so far. However, Japanese space policy and industries are dramatically changing. Government set a goal that by 2013, they strive to double the market size. It's mentioned in Space Industry Vision 2013, which is one of the most symbolic and innovative Japanese space policy. So this slide shows the governmental budget of both countries. So this number is for next budget. As you know, America has a huge governmental budget comparing to Japan. U.S. budget for the next fiscal year is about 41 billion came from NASA and DoD basically. 23 billion came from NASA and 18 billion came from DoD. Although the Japanese budget is much smaller than that of the US, however, this budget is supposed to be the biggest ever. This budget came from JAXA and other government and combined to about 5.2 billion. In this slide, I'd like to focus on share of GDP. Japanese space budget is not so smaller than that of other countries like France, Germany, and China. This slide shows the share of GDPs of government space budget among G20 countries. Japan is located fifth from top. Fortunately, as I mentioned in the previous slide, next Japanese budget is supposed to be the biggest one. So this number will go up to the same level of France. So from this slide, I'd like to talk about investment to space industries. Space Capital reported that over the past 10 years, around 30.9 billion was invested to global space infrastructure fields. Surprisingly, about 64% of that is United States. But this number is included two giant, SpaceX and Blue Origin. Total amount of these two companies is over 7.5 billion, which means about 1/3 of all investment to United States. Although Japan is about 2%, which means about $600 million, but it is fifth from the top. Next slide, I'd like to deep dive into the investment of both countries. So this slide shows remarks of investment to startups in both countries. First of all, in the investment to launch sector of the United States, even without SpaceX and Blue Origin, still much bigger than that of Japan. Recently, relatively space raised $500 million in 2020. And as you know, Rocket Lab became a market leader in small launch industries. Japanese startups for small launch are still under the development. However, I suppose that in next few years, some Japanese startups will start to provide their launch services. And also, Japanese startups also scale to startups, which is Axel Space and Synspective and iSpace, raised a large number of the fund in this slide. Considering the market size of Japanese space industries, these numbers are amazing and remarkable. So we can also understand differences between United States and Japan from type of investors. U.S. and the global market is basically based on venture capital angels, individuals. For example, in this slide, Relativity Space, the Planet, and Spire Global raised from venture capital mainly. However, in Japan, the industrial company are most main player to invest to space startups. Not only space-related company, but also non-space companies like trading company, construction companies, real estate developers, airline, travel agency, and manufacturers. It is a unique point that the many non-space Japanese companies are interested in space industries. And then they invested a lot of money to the space industries and supporting Japanese commercial space market. From this slide, I would like to talk about collaboration and partnership between United States and Japan. First of all, American launch services like SpaceX and Rocket Lab that provide many opportunity to Japanese satellite companies. For example, the SpaceX provides services to Japanese IQPS, JSAT, iSpace, and also Rocket Lab provides services to AIR and Synspective. Unfortunately, Japanese commercial launch services by startups have still been in development phase. However, next few years, I hope that some startups will start to their services in this field. One of them will come from the collaboration and partnership with Japan and the United States, which is that Virgin Orbit are planning to launch from Oita Prefecture. And also they collaborated with ANA. I would like to say congratulations to Virgin Orbit because their Demo 2 mission completely succeeded. I believe that this partnership will achieve a great outcome of both Japanese and the U.S. space industries. I think that satellite application is also quite an important factor to expand the space market. In this field, there are a lot of collaboration and partnership between Japanese and American companies. For example, some Japanese companies invest to the American satellite operators like Spire Global. Furthermore, Orbital Insight has their branch in Tokyo, and Japanese non-space companies like consulting firm and financial companies made partnership with Orbital Insight to create new services. As I mentioned at the previous slide, a lot of Japanese company, non-space company, are interested in the space industry. So especially they are into space technology, like data application from satellite, especially using image and the location from satellite. In Japan, there are a lot of big and strong companies in various industries. So I expected that involving these companies to the space industries as a users of satellite application is essential to grow the market. And many Japanese startups for small satellite like Axel Space, IQPS, Shinspective are about to start their service. I hope that Japan and U.S. collaboration in this field will accelerate in the future. Finally, I'd like to talk about human space activity and moon exploration. Historically, in this field is the best example for international collaboration. The International Space Station, ISS, has been maintained by multiple companies, including Japan and the United States. However, for near future, beyond ISS, we need more strong partnership and collaboration to explore deep space. As you know, NASA are planning the Artemis program, which is needed strong collaboration with commercial and international partnership to establish sustainable space exploration. In this January, NASA and the Japanese government have finalized the agreement for the Lunar Gateway. Under this agreement, Japanese government will provide several capabilities for the gateway's international habitation module and logistics resupply. I believe that not only governmental partnership, but also commercial partnership is needed. Japanese startup iSpace are joining to commercial lunar payload services program by NASA as a member of the Rapers team. In this field, there are a lot of complicated challenges and technological barriers. So I hope that strong partnership and leadership by United States and Japan lead us to new stage of our space industry we have never achieved. Thank you for hearing my presentation today. I guess that after my presentation, we will continue to discuss the collaboration and the challenges between Japan and the United States of the space industries in the following panel session. I hope you enjoy the following panel session. Thank you very much.
That's the end of the video. I hope you had any findings and inspirations from this input. Next, we will have the panel discussion. Please wait for a while until the speakers are ready. At the end of the panel discussion, we will have time to answer questions from all of you, so please use the YouTube chat feature to post any questions. In the panel discussion that we are about to start, representatives from NASA, JAXA, and space companies from both countries will discuss the successes and difficulties of Japan-U.S. partnership on the topic of overseas business development, including key points learned in the process of conducting projects, with the theme being the importance of U.S.-Japan collaboration. Please look forward to hearing a heated discussion. Mr. Sato, the moderator, will now take the floor.
Thank you, Shiga-san, for your introduction. Hello, everybody. Good morning to Japanese people and good afternoon to the people from the United States. My name is Masashi Sato. I'm a CEO and a director of Space Tide Foundation. So I'm very much honored to be here as a moderator of this great panel, speaking with NASA, JAXA, and all space industry players from 2 countries. And then I would also want to say congratulations to people from NASA, JAXA, and Mitsui Fudosan to start off your B2B forum for this Cross-Nihonbashi program. Then before we start off, I would like to introduce each of the panelists from the 2 different countries. So the panelists will now take the stage. So first, I'd like to introduce Mr. Terry Pegaduan from NASA Ames. Terry, please. Hello, good afternoon, Terry. Terry, I think you're on mute.
Good afternoon, good morning. Thank you, Sato-san.
All right, so Terry is a business development lead of NASA Ames, and he's an expert of partnerships and business development, collaborating with all kinds of players from industry from different countries. So thank you, Terry, for coming.
You're welcome. It's an honor.
Yep. And next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Takata from JAXA. Takata-san, please. Hi, good morning, Takata-san.
Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you very much, Sato-san.
Okay, so to introduce Takata-san, Takata-san is a JSpark producer from JAXA. JSpark is a industrial platform to foster new businesses of all kinds of industrial players in Japan. And Takata-san used to be a propulsion system development engineer and working in Houston, USA for ISS program. So he has a great experience of U.S. Japan partnership. Thank you, Takata-san. So next, we would like to invite panelist, Mr. Michael Fletcher from MJF Consulting. Mike Fletcher, please.
Yes, good morning, Sato-san. Good to see you again. Thank you.
Very nice to talk to you. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. So Michael Fletcher is a president of MJF Consulting, and he used to work for NASA for over 30 years at NASA Ames Research Center. And he just retired last October. So, otsukaresama. Well done for your job, Mike. And then he actually had also the actual experience of U.S. Japan partnership, spending a year in Tokyo from 2016 to 2017, working at different Japanese ministries and agencies. Thank you, Mike, for coming. And next, I would like to introduce Mr. Nagasaki, Masa Nagasaki from Space PD. Hi, Nagasaki-san.
Hi, Sato-san. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you again. So, Masa Nagasaki-san co-founded Space PD, a Japanese space startup, in September 2017, and he now serves as the CEO of the company. And Space PD was awarded the JAXA's first commercialization initiative, in which they manage the small sat development service from ISS Kibo. So thank you, Nagasaki-san, for joining today.
Thank you, Sato-san. Thank you for having me.
Yep. And last, thank you for your patience. We would like to have Mr. Mike Kim from Orbital Insight. Mike, please.
Hi, good to see you again. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining, Mike. So to introduce Mike Kim, He's the head of APAC and general manager, Japan of Orbital Insight. And Mike has a dual role of leading the APAC business and growing Japan office and team. So he's in charge of sales, business development, partner management, and client delivery for the Japan region and the APAC region as well. So he's now based in Tokyo. Is that right, Mike?
That's right. Based in Tokyo since 2019.
Great. Great to have you here today. Thank you, Mike.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Okay, so these are the lineup for the panelists for today's great discussion. So before we go to the following discussions, I'd like to hand this over to each of the panelists for your self-introductory presentation. So let's start off this presentation from Mr. Terry Pigodwin. Terry, can you take this over for your presentation?
Yes, I will. Thank you, and greetings from California to everybody. Let's go to the first slide, I suppose. I'll get to that. As Dr. Bookbinder said in his introduction, Ames is very happy to be participating in today's event. We began working with JAXA about 2 years ago now, Mike Fletcher and I actually, in sort of hosting these venues, these forums, to bring together companies and future exploration companies from both sides of the Pacific, right? So I wanted to show you this slide first as an introduction. Some of you may not know NASA very well, but it shows that NASA is very much spread out across the United States. You may not know this, that there are centers in the Southeast, in near Washington. Headquarters is in Washington, D.C. On the West Coast, there's, of course, Ames and 2 other NASA centers, including JPL, which is a contractor-run research center, and they are managing the Perseverance Mars rover. As you can see up on top on the left side, NASA Ames is in Silicon Valley. So we're a big part of Silicon Valley, and we offer a lot of innovation. And we are very much part of the ecosystem of the companies, the innovative technological companies that have grown up here. And increasingly, I might add that there are many Japanese companies that are starting innovation labs in Silicon Valley. So we have had a chance over the years to meet with them, and I'll share more about that later. But we've had wonderful discussions with Japanese companies such as Nissan and Panasonic. So I just wanted to show this to give you an idea of really how geographically dispersed NASA is. And I will close this slide by saying that all the work, the technical work, is done at the NASA centers. Your headquarters is in Washington, but the work is done across the country. So you may find that as you open up your American offices, you may want to look at this map and think of where in the U.S. you might find a good location to begin working in space with America. Please turn to the next slide. So I will close this portion to keep within my 3 minutes by just saying briefly about what Ames is. So we are about 3,000 employees, 1,200 government employees, and about 2,000 contractors. We also have a research park right next to NASA. That's the section on the far right. You see a red tiled roof. That is actually where iSpace, the Japanese company, had their first U.S. office was there. Now they're in Colorado, so it's like a stepping stone from Silicon Valley to Colorado. So we are one of the smaller NASA centers. The size of our center is about 600 hectares. And you can see in the back there, that's the world's largest wind tunnel. We have a lot of really interesting and cool facilities, and we would very much welcome you to visit after COVID, and we can show you around. Just quickly, our budget is about $1 billion U.S., and that's pretty stable from year to year. We will see what the future years bring, but it's been very stable. And that is the last slide there. And I would just close by saying that definitely at Ames, we are part of the ecosystem of Silicon Valley. And we would love to talk to innovators from Japan, and of course from U.S. too. I know there are many U.S. companies in this meeting. So we very much want to hear from you. And our role is to share information about NASA's exploration plans. So we look forward to engaging in dialogue with every one of you. Thank you, Sato-san. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Jay, for your wonderful presentation. So next, I would like to hand this over to Takata-san from JAXA. Takata-san, are you ready?
Yes. So good afternoon and good morning. So could you show my slide? Okay.
Yep.
So our team member had already explained about our activity, JAXA's activity, including the JSPAC program. So in the first half of this forum, so I don't think I have to explain the JSPAC anymore. So I have one slide. So I was engaged in the rocket end development and H2 transfer vehicle system and the propulsion system development operation and the international coordination of the ISS program in Houston, Texas, USA. Then after returning to Japan, we launched the JSPAC program. And now I'm promoting the multiple value co-creation activities and aimed at improving JAXA's R&D capabilities and creating the new private businesses, especially for me in the area of the manned space business and the space transportation business. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Takata-san. So both what Terry and Takata-san are doing is really, really productive to foster the new space businesses for all kinds of players from different countries, I guess. Thank you very much for you two for the presentation. So I would like to hand this over to Mike Fletcher for your self-introduction. Please, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Masashi, for that introduction. And let me also thank Mitsui Fudosan and JAXA for hosting our event today. We're here today because commercial space is growing and global, which we saw in the video earlier, which is really providing strategic opportunities for U.S.-Japan collaboration that mutually benefit both nations. So with that in mind, I've got a few observations that I'm going to start out with, and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself along the way and why I started MJF Consulting. So could I have the next slide, please? So although the space marketplace is growing rapidly, government investment is still critical to sustain that growth. Both the U.S. and Japan have policies that are directing the civil agencies to actively engage and promote the commercial sector, and we've heard some of that already. Now, that means that NASA, JAXA, and other government agencies will continue to be important customers for expanding the commercial sector. But in this global environment, as an international entity, the challenge is how to work with those agencies. Now, in working at NASA headquarters and at Ames with Terry on various partnership challenges, what we saw as one viable strategy was for non-U.S. companies to team with a U.S. contractor and have that contractor serve as a prime to NASA. Now, that still poses challenges for non-U.S. participants, like requiring work be done in the U.S., for example, but there are opportunities in this approach. And an example of this approach was mentioned earlier as from the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, or CLPS program, where Draper Labs is the prime contractor to NASA and iSpace is teamed with them. Now, this approach is more of a collaboration than a traditional client capture per se, but it's a strategy for expansion because it allows the company and develop relationships. And in fact, in my experience working with and at JAXA, I think that approach is also viable for U.S. companies that are interested in working with JAXA in Japan. So the last point I'll make on the chart is that language and cultural differences can interfere with effective communication and information sharing. Now, as the marketplace becomes more global, managing this only becomes more important. Unfortunately, I've seen a few times where a lack of, say, sensitivity has led to misunderstandings or problems. And so bicultural and bilingual communication skills can greatly help navigate the subtle difficulties that can interfere with the successful collaborations and partnerships. And so really, all of that is why I started MJF Consulting, and to offer my professional experience in U.S.-Japan collaboration to companies interested in developing opportunities either in the U.S. or Japan with the government or the private sector. Having worked at NASA for over 30 years and working with JAXA, working at JAXA, the ministry office is living in Japan and engaging the industry on both sides of the Pacific has afforded me a unique position to have seen many different perspectives of this ecosystem. I'm really excited to be part of the growing marketplace. And so with that, I'll stop, and I look forward to our discussion today. So thank you, Sato-san.
Thank you, Mike Fletch. Yeah, you have a kind of diverse experience in your background. So you've been working for NASA and now kind of serving as a private consultant and cross kind of category experience between like public and private and over also different nations. That would be kind of bring us kind of a lot of benefits to foster the new business in space. Thank you. Okay, so let me hand the next presentation over to two industrial players from companies. So first, I want to ask Nagasaki-san to make your self-introduction. Nagasaki-san, please.
Hi, thank you, Sato-san. So again, good morning, people in Japan, and good evening in U.S. And congratulations on JAXA and Mitsui Fudosan for this event, and thank you for having me today. So can I get my slide to show you? Yep, let me introduce who we are and what we are doing. So our company called Space BD. The BD is the abbreviation for the business development, which is my background. And we exactly focus on the business development in space. So we are not a manufacturer, so we are doing business, for example, using the proven asset in commercial manner, something like that. So I have dreamed to, as a business person, to make profitable and sustainable new industry. So the space is the one to me. So we are doing business with the ambition to making space into a thriving and commercial industry. So I co-founded this company almost 3.5 years ago, and we actually do a diversified business, as you see in the bottom of this slide, from satellite launch services till the importing and exporting the component or facility, even education, which is actually my background before starting Space BD. So can you go to the next slide? So among others, our current key business domain is launch services, especially the key strategic partnership with JAXA, as you see on the slide. So I'm honored to say that Space BD have been selected by JAXA as the commercial service provider in terms of the using international space stations, satellite deployment system, as well as external platform, and also ride-share opportunity of current H2A or coming H3 large launch vehicle, and also using HTVX resupply vehicle to the ISS. So the market is, our current customer base is quite diversified internationally. So far our customer base is inside Japan, as well as Asia Pacific area, and also the Europe. So more than 50 nano micro satellites we are handling so far. So yeah, maybe I hope to share what we are doing later. But thank you, and I get back to Sato-san.
Thank you, Nagasaki-san, for your presentation. I'm very much impressed with your fast growth since you've launched your own company. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So lastly, Mike Kim, thank you for waiting. So please go ahead with your presentation.
Sure. Thanks, Masashi. Appreciate it. So if we could put up the first slide, please. And Orbital Insight, it's great to be here, share a little bit about our story and relationship with, of course, the U.S. and also Japan. Orbital Insight is a AI geospatial analytics company. So we're a software company. We're not working on the hardware satellite side. We're AI analytics funded by Sequoia Google Ventures. And what we're doing is taking geospatial data sets and analyzing that for our clients. So the data sets would be satellite imagery is where we started, and we've since added mobile location data and AIS shipping data, to name a few of the data sources. Our founder, Dr. Jimmy Crawford, is former NASA, coincidentally, and started the company with the vision of, can satellite imagery be used combined with AI, deep learning, computer vision? Can that be combined to provide benefit to our customers? So in the early days, we started with car counting at retail locations. And early on, that thesis was proved that we could add value by using AI on satellite imagery. And since then, we've expanded. If you look at this image of Rotterdam, the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, you could see, you can really, from a high resolution Airbus image, you can really get a lot of data. You can, if we were to zoom in, you can count cars, you can count trucks, ships, you can see different classes of ships and airplanes. And that was how our company started in the early days, and we've since expanded. And I'll just review a couple of use cases. If we go to the next slide, please. And here's an example of, for government clients, where we are at a macro scale counting objects around the world. And in this example, you'll see airplane detection. And we have multiple classes of airplanes, so the computer vision can tell a fighter versus a bomber versus a small aircraft versus a commercial versus a helicopter. You can see some of the red helicopters there. So we've trained the computer vision to detect different classes of airplanes, which we're continuing to expand for planes and ships as well. In this example, you can see that our Go platform counted 53,974 aircraft in one day. And we're just monitoring 100+ airfields around the world daily. And our clients are able to click in and see the aircraft. If we move on to the next example, and we can dive deeper into any one of these. If we go to the next slide, please. This is an example more on the mobile location data side, where we're using mobile location data within the platform to trace out supply chains. So that is to connect various parts of the supply chain. For a company like Unilever, you also see Barry Callebaut, the chocolate manufacturer, Henkel, are a few using this capability, where using mobile location data, Unilever, and this is all public, if you go to unilever.com, they talk about this project. They know who they're buying from, the first tier suppliers, for example. They don't know all of the second, third, fourth tier suppliers. And they're using our platform to be able to map that out for sustainability reasons. They need to know that full supply chain for problems such as deforestation when they're purchasing palm oil, for example. If we can go to the final slide, I'll just very quickly wrap up. And Japan, next slide, please. On the Japan side, as was mentioned earlier, we we opened our office in 2018 in Tokyo. Tokyo was our first international office, and we've now expanded with multiple investors and partners. SMBC, Itochu Corporation, SkyPerfect JSAT, and Abim Consulting are 4 partners in Japan. Look forward to diving in a little bit deeper into the Japan relationship during the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Kim. I'm very glad to see that you have been working successfully in Japan and expanding your business here. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Okay. So before we go to the further discussions, please let me introduce myself a little bit, and also I'll talk a little bit about the scope of this discussion. So can I have my slide here on the screen? Okay, thank you. So please go next. Yeah, so this is me. I'm Masashi Sato from Spaceside Foundation. I'm active as a CEO of the organization. And next, please. And just to introduce who we are, Spaceside is a nonprofit organization based in Tokyo, Japan. And our mission is to foster new space businesses in Japan as well as APAC region, and to make space as one of the leading industry in the world. Please go next. And for what we do, one is making a biannual industry report, which is called Space Study Compass. So please Google Compass if you are interested. So as you can see here, it's kind of a really fancy designed report to describe what's happening in the space industry in Japan and the APAC region. Please go next. And also, we do annual conferences every year. And for this year in 2021, in this month, on the 23rd to 24th, we'll be hosting an online in-person hybrid conference in Tokyo. You can see through online streaming as well. And we do have over 60 speakers from 10 different regions and countries. So please join if you are interested. And please go next. So to talk a little bit about the scope of this panel discussion, I would like to put emphasis on the big shift of the space industry recently. So there is actually a big shift to private industry in the space sector. So as you can see on the left, there is a conventional space industry structure, which is a sort of top-down approach from the government. So the government takes the lead for all kinds of space missions, in which, as the prime contractors, space entities, space corporations follow the space policy of each of their domestic countries' policy. So in that sense, the conventional space industry tends to be a sort of domestic world. However, on the other hand, the recent change of the space industry is something like on the right-hand side. So in this ecosystem, all kinds of different sectors and players coming into the space industry, even from the outside of the industry. That means non-space companies and corporations can enter the market as well. And in this environment, the relationships between different players are kind of really flat and fair. So in that sense, I depict this structure as a circle. So the current space industry ecosystem consists of two different verticals. One is the government industry as a triangle, and fully commercial-based space business ecosystem as a circle. Please go next. So because of this huge big shift, this industry became really global compared to the conventional space industry structure. So the reason why this business attracts all kinds of people is that, one is because every single space player has really magnificent space visions, and also with no doubt this space market is pretty much global, because space is, of course, deal with whole Earth. So that's why there is no border to deal with global market space commercial activities. Please go next. So, however, to survive in this global competitive market, it is very necessary to learn about the differences between different countries. So this is one of the examples of the difference of the regions and nations. So as you can see here on the left, this is a diagram of the numbers of investors to the space startups. So the trends of the world, basically driven by the trend of the United States. Venture capitalists take the lead on the investment into space startups. Whereas in Japan, on the right, in Japan, rather than VCs, actually a Japanese non-space corporation takes the lead on the space investment. So this is one of the good examples of the difference of the business environment of different countries. Please go next. Yep. So for this panel discussion, we would like to focus on the U.S. and Japan's collaboration and partnership. However, it is not very easy for each player to enter and survive in the market where you're not from. So outside of your domestic country, it is very difficult and not easy to make your new own businesses. So through the panel discussions, I would like to hear their thoughts and opinions and experiences from the experts of Japan, United States collaboration and partnership. So let's start off the actual discussion from now on. Please go next. So I prepared a couple of questions to ask to the 5 panelists. So please go next. All right, so from here, I'd like to open up the discussions to the panelists, asking you about the pretty much general questions. So I would like to know about the values of the U.S.-Japan partnership and collaboration. So asking you to hear that, what are the actual values of you or your organizations to collaborate with overseas players in Japan or U.S.? So I mean, from people from Japan, from U.S., what is the reason and the value to collaborate with Japan, and vice versa, for those who are from Japan, why you want to work with people in the United States or the market of the United States. So please let me ask you two from NASA and JAXA, Terry and Takata-san, since you guys are dealing with very attractive programs such as programs in AIMS, such as Space Portal, SBIR, and JSPARC at JAXA, and also recently Artemis program has emerged. So there are kind of lots and lots of Japan and US collaborative platform. So through those experiences, you might have some background stories about the values of the US-Japan collaboration. So may I ask Takata-san first for the value of yours working together with US?
Okay, thank you, Sato-san. So for me, the emergence is important for me. So the emergence means that add one and one to get two and more. And of course, its ecosystem continue to spread and the value is amplified several times. So in the ISS program and the HTV development, based on my experience, so HTV is the Japanese cargo transport vehicle to the International Space Station. So we cooperate technically by connecting at the human level, like the knowledge sharing and the resource sharing. So and aim for the mutual benefits at the program level. So of course, we have learned a lot from NASA, who had a lot of experiences from the shuttle program was something. And for example, for me, is that it's a very specific area, but the how to control the transient response characteristics in the propulsion system. So we have learned a lot from NASA, and it helped us a lot. And of course, I believe that there was some vice versa, so feedback to NASA from JAXA, but and sometimes there are some battles or fighting, but at the program level, so we always aim for the same goal and as to maximize the results on the ISS for the world. So yeah, I would like to pay attention to what kind of results to emerge in the world of the Japan and US cooperation. So thank you, Sato-san.
Thank you. So the point is, I think there are kind of lots of like tech transfer or mutual conversation of the lessons learned of each of the side of the technical experience. So that's why each other can learn each other. And then, do you have any kind of feel any value in the business context? So since NASA and JAXA have a tight connection, and is there anything you can spread it out to the business players for their businesses?
Yes, so the cooperation between JAXA and NASA sometimes may relate to the opportunity for the business for the private company. So one example is that so recently one business private company is now trying to create the business on the ISS by the collaboration with the NASA, with NASA support and also the JAXA's R&D and the technical support. And So I think these two agencies collaboration have some may create some opportunity or business chance for private company, and also sometimes can help them to reduce their business risks. So I think so it just started, but I think especially for my JSPAC producer, so I want to create such kind of the chance or possibilities as much as possible as a JSPAC producer.
Thank you. Yeah, I think support from space agencies is very necessary especially for non-space companies. And I think having not only JAXA but also NASA support would be really beneficial for Japanese companies as well. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, I would like to ask Terry as well.
Sure.
So what do you think about your values?
Well, number one, from an Ames perspective, because we're one of 10 NASA centers, it's coordination with headquarters, right? As a government laboratory, we have to be transparent and open with headquarters. Ultimately, while the centers propose the work and come up with ideas, headquarters executes the agreements and reviews. They review the entire thing. So coordination is key. And of course, coordination across companies, between governments and businesses, very important. As Mike said earlier, we need to be sort of on the same page. Number two is we need to have innovation and creativity. A lot of these things we're going to do going forward are very new. We're going to have to find new pathways to work together between B2B, government to business. And so I think we should be creative, share like on these forums, have ideas as you just said. So that's very important. Creativity and innovation, and really learning, having the learning mindset across the ocean, right? And then lastly, my last value is patience and understanding. Because frankly, a lot of these things with government can take time. I'm sure everyone has had experiences working with different agencies, whether it's DoD or whatever, on both sides. So we just have to be aware of that and understand the process. One thing that Mike and I did, that I do now is, and I think Mike can do in the future, is really pave the way so that people understand what the process is and how to approach it the best way so that there is value created. So I think all of those things, transparency, open-mindedness, and patience are very key values for everyone to have. So,
Terry, thank you. So what you're talking about is pretty much far from the kind of conventional bureaucracy of the government. So I'm really impressed with the keywords like innovative and open-minded, transparency. So I think it's not very easy to handle those kind of innovative activities. And is there any kind of tips or what you're kind of struggling with or your challenges regarding to be like that innovative?
Challenges, yes. Well, I think innovation has no limits, right? Wakata-san worked in the most exciting place in the world at ISS and Johnson, so sky's the limit. But I think the challenges are more of the legal and regulatory, and absolutely we need to involve our stakeholders and engage them early so that we can identify the potential challenges, or really, work with our lawyers, work with our regulators, the compliance people, and have them early on in the discussion, because as you know, there's so many challenges working across nations globally. ISS has its own, set of rules, but rules can be, handled, right, as long as we have the right experts. So I think, again, knowledge is key. Involve the right people in the discussions early, right? I think that's very important. So,
thank you very much, Terry. So I'd like to thank you. I'd like to ask this question to two industry operators, Nagasaki-san and Mike Kim. So the basic question of this, my kind of intention is that why you're not just settled in your own country, but just open up your business outside of your home country, and what is the value to work with Japan or United States? So let me ask this question first to Mike Kim.
Sure. Yeah, happy to share a little bit of our perspective. I started with Orbital Insight back in 2016, and I remember summer of 2016 getting our first emails coming in from Japan, and got an email from Itochu Corporation introducing themselves, and then followed by ABeam Consulting introducing themselves, and it started off a whole journey. We're starting December 2016. Then our COO, Kevin O'Brien, myself, we went and took a trip to Tokyo about a week, and in December 2016. And since then, I was going every month to Tokyo to explore the business because we saw so much potential. So I was commuting from San Francisco, my home then, and the Palo Alto office, going back and forth. And I was doing 20 days a month in San Francisco and then 10 days a month in Tokyo. So a lot of, airplanes and hotels. And later, fast forward, we did set up a business, hire a team, partners, investors, and became our first office that we opened internationally, one of the fastest growing countries for Orbital Insight in terms of the business. And so, why? I mean, a few points I'd point out is, one, I'm of the belief the U.S. Japan bilateral relationship is one of the most important in the world, if not the most important. So I'm a big believer in the U.S. Japan bilateral relationship. In terms of buying U.S. technology, I think Japan's number 2 buyer. U.S. would be the number 1. Japan's the number 2 buyer of U.S. technology. So Japan being the 3rd largest economy in the world and 2nd largest buyer of U.S. technology. And, I'd also bring up Japan's interest in space and AI and things such as geospatial and remote sensing. All of that comes together as a perfect mix, really, which is why I think we've seen such a match for the business of Orbital Insight. And the final thing I'd point out is Japan's need. We see a lot in the news and research these days about Japan's need for innovation and digital. We see digital groups popping up, new business groups and departments popping up all over the place, and this reorganizations, restructuring in Japan, and such pressing times, but also tremendous opportunity. And I'm a big believer in what's going on in Japan, which is why my wife and I relocated in 2019 from San Francisco to Tokyo to continue to build out the Japan and Asia business.
Thank you, Mike. So the point I think is Japan is the world's 3rd biggest economy, and so the nation has kind of huge momentum of a digital economy, and that actually made a kind of chemical reaction with your businesses. That's why you decided to hop into Japanese market, right?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so Nagasaki-san, so I believe that you're not active only in Japan, but also in different countries, including the United States. But specifically for the United States, what is your values of you to work outside of the country with U.S.?
Yeah, thank you, Sato-san. Actually, from my business perspective, in this space industry, so everybody, I'm frankly to say, nobody has the clear answer how to do profitable business and sustainable business. So everybody is challenging by themselves. So the U.S. has the biggest market both in terms of supply and demand, and Japan one of the biggest. So there are lots of the business cases, examples, good practice. So it's logical to share how we do business in space. And also, to me, it's especially we are the major business field is in the ISS, International Space Station. So of course, how we the ISS is of course the U.S. and Japan strong relationship is the foundation. So we are discussing the NASA with NASA or U.S. entity like NanoRacks, how we use ISS efficiently or so maximize the value, economical value. So it's logical. Yeah.
Thank you, Nagasaki-san. So from the stories from both Mike and Nagasaki-san, and also Terry Takata-san, I think one of the aspects that people get attracted by the United States is because there is, of course, a huge budget of the government. Also, there is a really conventional and high-level space technologies. So that's why it is very natural to get into the space market in the United States. Whereas in Japan, there is a kind of world's third economy, involving non-space companies, and that matches with the current space business technologies, and that brings people to Japan, I think. So, Mike, based on the comments from all of us, what is your kind of feeling about the U.S.-Japan collaboration?
Yeah, Mike, Kim, and Terry kind of hit on a little bit of a blend of some of the things that I thought of too. You mentioned kind of my unique background and perspective. I've had the opportunity to work collaboration between NASA and JAXA from kind of both sides, because Terry and I worked together the last 4 years before I retired, and we fostered this relationship and grew these kind of opportunities that we're at, the events we're in right now, for example. But when I was in Japan for the year and working with JAXA, I was reaching back to NASA. And so I had an opportunity to sort of see both perspectives. And to Mike's point, the U.S. and Japan have sustained a long and important strategic partnership that's really critical for the region. And space is a key part of that element, and it includes civil, security, and commercial space elements, right? And I think that there's a tremendous value in fostering and ongoing and strengthening those relationships, particularly I'll say the commercial one, because there's a mutual benefit, I think, in terms of the economic value to the nations. And we all appreciate, I think, the other elements of that too, as far as the civil element and the national strategic or strategy and security and whatnot. But Terry hit on this issue about regulation and understanding the regulation, and there's, when you're talking about working with the government entities, there's a whole lot of legwork that's involved in kind of getting those agreements approved and trying to understand exactly what the limitations are for working with those entities. And I think that as the civil market has sort of become one of the customers in space, and the commercial marketplace has become so much larger and much more important, the policymakers, I think, really need to adapt and understand that the regulations that are going to enable those business collaborations to thrive need to be updated. And so I think that the industrial base from both sides can help to inform the policymakers to enable these changes that will, I think, foster better collaboration and cooperation and opportunities in the future.
Yes, thank you, Mike Fletch. I think you raised a really good point about the regulation, since it could be one of the challenges, but on the other side, it could be also opportunity for the business development. So let me go to the next, not next, but two next from now on. So I may want to skip the next slide. Go next. Yep. So let me go to this question. So as Mike partially kind of raised a good point about the challenges, so I would like to ask everybody that what are the biggest challenges you've had in the U.S.-Japan collaboration? So this is a question to everybody, but especially to those who are from companies. So Nagasaki-san and Mike Kim, could you share with us what kind of concrete challenges you ever had, and how did you solve it and dealt with it? So anyone, either of you?
I'm happy to start.
Yep.
Sure. So we, on the one hand, Japan, one of our fastest growing countries for the company, and it takes a while to establish the relationships and trust. But once you do, it's a long-term relationship, and that's one of the things we love and I love about doing business in Japan. On the other hand, there are challenges, as you said, and for us, at a high level, the challenge is how do we, as a U.S. company, and myself as an American, how do we do business in Japan as a U.S. company, as an American, and in a Japanese way? And at a high level, that's the very difficult question, where there are times where it's a different language, different culture, different business traditions, but at the same time, we're a U.S. company and largely led by Americans. So this is there's some tension there and some challenges. So how have we dealt with them? I'd say we've really leaned heavily on our Japan team. We have a phenomenal Japan team here with Japanese individuals who really help bridge that gap. Personally, I have used a lot of coaching from people that have gone ahead before me and led successful teams, and investors and friends, et cetera, here in the community that have helped me. But on the lighter side, difficult things like seating arrangements, how to refer to someone, the importance of the dinners and the meetings outside the office. I mean, those are some of the things you have to learn. Probably I'll end with one concrete story. Was the more time I spent in Japan, I'm expected more to understand the Japanese ways of doing business. And one of the big challenges is the Japanese highest level of standards for service and support, and that a lot of times there's tension with U.S. companies and with engineering and product. So sometimes there's a challenge there. There's a difference of expectations on what we thought we committed to and what a Japanese company wanted. And I remember the first time I had to deal with some mismatch of expectations and an unhappy client, and having to bridge the gap between what the U.S. engineering and product team thought was there. So I had to learn the sumimasen. It has many meanings, but the one of them being I'm sorry, and had to get some coaching on, going and saying there was a misunderstanding in this scenario, and that was one concrete example that came to mind. And after I did that, everything was okay, and it was quite an amazing experience culturally to experience that.
Yeah, Mike, this is kind of really commonly heard stories, and then you've been struggling with it, but I heard that you're successfully dealt with it. So for your adjustment to Japanese business culture, so you mentioned coping with Japanese people and learning Japanese business culture and so on and so on. But what do you actually do for your business activities? Is there any kind of concrete trial and challenges that you try to be kind of good relationship with the Japanese companies, rather than just linguistic things or the apologize?
Yeah, I mean, on the concrete side, I mean, I would say roadmap. I mean, just one of the things from a product perspective, we talk about roadmap a lot, a product roadmap, where the product is, and Japan being a different market, having different needs. There's always customization requests in Japan and other countries. Japan is high on the customization side, right? Even something basic as language, wanting Japanese language in the product or whatever it be. But I would say Japan, in terms of need for customization in the Japan market, is high levels. And that's a pretty traditional challenge, where you've got the U.S. product, you have the U.S. solution. Japan wants it, but they need plus 30%. How do you bridge that gap? that's one probably big one that we deal with.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I'd like to ask Mike Fletch on this topic. If you have any comments, since you may have already kind of same feeling about the story of Mike Kim.
Yeah, so, we talked about regulation. So there's really two things that I think I've experienced quite a bit and sort of repeatedly. One is the regulation and the issues of struggling with that. And we talked a little bit about that already. But the other one, which I think is really critically important, is just on the cultural side. And Mike alluded to this just a moment ago, but I often see misunderstandings resulting in miscommunication. And I really think it's important to think about what the other party is needing and looking for and expecting in a relationship. And I've been in more than one relationship or collaboration where I would say the U.S. side said too much and the Japanese side said too little. And what I mean by that is that, the U.S. partner was sort of demanding or not as flexible along the lines of what Mike was talking about with his engineering team. And the Japanese partner was not able to be direct enough to make their expectations or limitations explicitly known. And what happens as a result is there's frustration on both sides and the information isn't flowing, the communication becomes broken. This is where I think having somebody who understands the culture and the language can really help manage the information flow and the communication. In my particular case, the way I dealt with these situations was sort of to act as the interpreter to the best I could on both sides and meet in the middle. And I think that that's one of the things about being under the COVID restrictions that's been really difficult is that particularly I think in Japan, face-to-face relationships are important and really, really very helpful in fostering collaboration. And without that kind of aspect, being able to travel and see your customers and clients directly, that's where it becomes a little bit of it's been sort of a hindrance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I understand the situation right now. Okay, so thank you for your patience, Nagasaki-san. I'd also like to ask you as well, from your perspective of the challenges that you've had in the collaboration with the United States.
Yes, thank you, Saru-san. I'd like to try to say different aspects. But actually, the challenge is to take a balance between the competition and collaboration. So let me give you an example on the ISS. Like NANDRAX is our important partner, and we share the philosophy to how promote commercial use of the ISS. But at the same time, so we do CubeSat satellite deployments from the ISS, and NANDRAX does exactly the same thing. So in this sense, we must be a competitor, but different way how to use the resupply vehicle or external platform. In this sense, we share how we use this facility efficiently. So yeah, that's the thing. We have to actually the competition and collaboration must coexist, unfortunately, or it's yeah. So the important thing is to share the philosophy. Firstly, let's make the pie bigger first. Otherwise, we can't compete. If we compete at this point, because of the early stage of the industry, so nobody can be the winner. So we are discussing something like that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Nagasaki-san. That's a big challenge, and you must have lots of dilemma on which way you should take. So it's kind of sometimes necessary to collaborate with your competitors to expand your business. Do any of you have any comments on this topic, like collaboration or competition? Terry or Takata-san, you might have seen that kind of situation of the countries from your country? Terry, you're on mute, I guess.
Yeah, I would say, thank you. I would say that government to government, it is more collaboration, but as we branch out into more of an ecosystem that involves different modes of collaboration, then we may have that mix. And I totally agree that you have to know the expectation on both sides and understand. And I'll add that the political framework that we both exist in, both the U.S. and Japan, plays a vital role because as you know, in the U.S., our budget is determined on a year-to-year basis by Congress. So that shifts quite differently. And of course, in Japan, it's a different cycle. So that mismatch of the funding cycle from the government agencies or to the government agencies can be a challenge. But again, it's something you do by learning, by adapting, learning and getting to know each other better. And that's happening now, I think. I really do. So.
All right, thank you. So since time-wise, I want to jump onto the next question, the last question. Please go, number 3. Yes, so to each of you, I just want to quickly ask you the keywords of the KSF, key success factors of U.S.-Japan collaboration. So, and I also want to hear like concrete tips for new challengers among the audiences who are interested in U.S.-Japan collaboration. So let's ask Takata-san first, can I?
Okay, so Terry said the same thing, but the new framework for public and the private co-creation between two countries for me.
Tech partnership and why it is important.
Yeah, so as I explained one example that we can say that the cooperation between NASA and JAXA is creating the business opportunities for the private sector. And there is another example that the Japanese company are collaborating with the U.S. company, and its business partnership progresses, and JAXA and the NASA is supporting them. So we are supporting. So there are a wide variety of the cooperation. But we'd like to expect that B2B collaboration between Japan and U.S. Should occur more and more. And so JAXA and NASA have to be in charge with the new roles. So especially from the R&D perspective or rule making to reduce the business risk. And so I think the public agency may have to be conscious that the private companies business go and exit. So exit means that the creating a private business is private business creation, and also that. But this is a chance and opportunity for public agency. So by supporting the private companies' business creation, this is the chance for JAXA and NASA to progress our R&D level, so with a sense of the speed of the business creation. So I think now the JSPAC program, at the JSPAC program, we are challenging such a framework. So business creation, and JAXA is supporting for the viewpoint of the R&D, and our R&D results will be applied to the business creation, the private company's business creation directly. So this kind of the new framework and the new role for public agency will be, I think, expected more and more for the business creation, especially the B2B collaboration.
Thank you, Takata-san. I would just like to hand this over to Terry as well, from the public agency perspective. So what is your KSF of the U.S.-Japan collaboration?
KSF? Okay. Number one, networking. Number one is networking. Definitely, learn who your potential customers are on both sides, right? Some companies have open innovation labs, the larger ones, but you can still go to Space Symposium in Colorado every year. Hopefully we'll be back in person in August or September. That's key, right? Go to that. The Japanese embassy in Washington, D.C. often hosts space-related online events. And if you're in the States, you can go try to attend those. Next month, my boss is going to speak at Japan House. Japan House is a sort of a commerce, a promotional house in Los Angeles. So we'll be doing that next month. So I think it's really networking, number one, just getting to know each other. And number two is really matching. So NASA works based upon linkage to our mission. So educate yourselves on what NASA's mission is and how your innovative ideas can contribute to that. And so it's important to know the market and to come up with innovative ideas that can serve your customer, whether you're U.S. and seeking to work in Japan or vice versa. Unfortunately, as I said, we cannot get away from the regulatory rules. So there's some caveats there that we have to sort of keep in mind. But definitely learn how to align your product and what you offer with what your customer needs, whether it's government or B2B.
Thank you very much, Terry. Really kind of overall thorough comments. Thanks so much. All right. I'd like to ask new company players, two company players about this question. So regarding KSF, for your own business to collaborate with overseas, but especially for concrete tips for new challenges. If you have any advice for those who will be coming up to this collaboration, international collaboration, could you give them some advice? So let me start off from Nagasaki-san.
Okay, I would say the important is sharing philosophy and also the communication. So let me give you the example is So again, back to that, as I mentioned before, that the competition and collaboration, but we are why we collaborate is to create sustainable and thriving industry together, something like that. And also, yes, as two Mikes explained well, that the communication is quite important because yes, the culture is different and the time difference. So yeah, important is many communications why we do business together, or to share the lessons learned as much as possible, and yeah, that's the key, I think.
How can Japanese people can develop their language and communication skills to work with overseas?
Yeah, it's not easy, but I think so. I'm a believer that the language is the secondary. So if I try, of course, we are not native English speakers, so we're not good at the beautiful English. But I think we can transfer what we are thinking through the face on the voices. So yeah, so we don't need to stick the how to say the full formality or the languages maybe. So that's a fun. So to share, it's human beings things. So yeah, so in that sense, the face-to-face is quite important to me. That helps us to communicate well without misunderstanding. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Your energetic activities proved by action. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so Mike Kim, can I have your keywords and tips for the audiences? I think you're on mute, Mike Kim, maybe?
Thanks. Yes, I was on mute. Nagasaki-san gave some good tips, and you know, one of course is the product, and every, you know, for us coming from a product software company perspective, and If you don't have a good solution, nothing can replace that. So tremendous energy on, having a good product and solution, and the Japan market will respond. I was looking at a recent usage report for our platform. An interesting data point was out of the top 10 users of our Go, the Go is the name of our platform, geospatial analytics platform, 40% of the companies were Japanese companies and organizations all over the world. So globally, so that's including U.S. and global. So 40% came out of Japan. So I think Japan will really respond if you have a good product and solution. But that's very basic. Beyond that, I'd really point key factors for success is you have to address what I was saying earlier, the customization need and service level need. And if you can't do that, you'll fail if you can't bridge that gap. And Japan will, when I started, one of our investors who's expert in this field of Japan U.S. business said, warn your engineers and product that this first Japanese project is going to be very, very challenging. And it was. And there was a huge gap we needed to bridge in terms of expectation and customization requests. And we thought we understood the customization request, but it was more. So this customization and expectation on service level support is, the words my investor told me, get ready. It's going to be challenging. Warn your engineers and product. But again, on the positive side, it's tremendously fruitful and it's a long-term relationship. You need a Japan team to bridge that gap. So as you can start to hire someone that can bridge that gap. Otherwise, it's really hard to deliver, with Japanese expectations without a Japan team that really understands that. And thankfully, we have a great team. Last thing I'd say is give some thought to your story and intersection. I also got the intersection of, or you could think of it as your story. What is the match of your company? And I got good advice on this early on to Japan. And also on the investor side, one investor talked about how Twitter really connected, really took off in Japan because of the Tohoku earthquake and the how it delivered a service to the country during that time of need. So this is something we're thinking a lot about. The Japanese government is a customer of ours. We work with a company, media companies here in Japan, finance. How can we service the Japanese people and the market and the companies, and what is the intersection of what we're trying to provide and the need here in Japan? That'd be a third topic I would mention.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. What I felt was you have kind of really highest priority on product delivery and customization for the customers. So you're now kind of really getting used to the Japanese business culture, and I feel like your respect to Japanese business. But that is the reason why you are successfully performing. Thank you.
Well, thanks. It's been an unbelievable journey. Learned a lot, and I've been loving every minute of it, and really love doing business in Japan. Our conversation, I think we first sat down for either coffee or meal back in 2017. So quite a different conversation, and a lot has happened. And thanks always for your support all along the way.
Thank you, Mike. All right. So the other Mike Quest, thank you for your patience. So please summarize the whole panel, but yeah, please give your thoughts on the keywords and key success factors of the collaboration.
Yeah, I think, just a couple real briefly, because I know we're just about out of time. I think what you heard from just about everybody in one way or another was how important communication is, and culture, and understanding. And honestly, going out for a drink, nomikai, or an opportunity to socialize is just really important. I think Masa was going to say that, but he didn't quite get to drinking. But I think that's a part of the culture that, you kind of have to understand. And it makes a difference, and it helps. I think as far as more sort of concrete things, I think what's really important, and something that Terry alluded to too, is understanding what you and your company can bring, and what strengths you have in that collaboration that you want to enter into, and how you're going to work with your partner in a way that's going to make their product or their system or their ideas better at the same time as you. That's the collaboration part of it. And I think particularly working with NASA or working with JAXA, you're going to need to ask yourself, what is the benefit for NASA or what is the benefit for JAXA in entering into this relationship? Because that's going to be critical for them to get into an agreement with you on. And I think it also is true in the private sector as well. So looking for those opportunities to foster a mutually beneficial relationship. So I'll stop there and say it's been great. I love this panel. It's been a lot of fun talking with everybody, and I wish we could all see each other again in person. I hope that'll happen at some point. Maybe next time I'm in Tokyo, you guys are in the Silicon Valley. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for summarizing the panel. So since although we are running out of time, but I'm happy to have one open question from the audience. Although it's a limitation of time, but I would like to speak out the question. So traditionally, government contracted private and build government infrastructures. Now it is more PPP, private-public partnership type of contract, which private provide their infrastructure as a service provider. Is this change related to global collaboration? So I just want to pick one answer, any of you. Does anybody have?
Okay, so okay, I'm Jim. Okay, from Jackson. Okay, so in the it's a good question. And in the JSPAC program for JAXA, so we started a lot of dialogues from the very beginning of the partnership, and private companies proposes the business idea to the JAXA directory, and we have a lot of discussion. And so, for example, the requirements and role sharing, resource sharing, and the cost sharing, and we will create the business plan and the R&D plan for JAXA. So I think so we are trying to do this kind of the new kind of a partnership and we say co-creation, but this kind of the public-private partnership we have just started, and And there are several results already created in the market. Of course, not enough, but we have several results. So I think JAXA is trying to apply the new approach, new kind of the PPP in the JSPAC program. So if you are interested in the JSPAC, so please check our website, and that shows a lot of information. So thank you.
I'd say this is also a question that gets to, it's a really good question. And I think it gets to what I was pointing out earlier about the evolution of the industry and where regulation needs to be updated to address and really enable these kind of collaborations to go on. So I do think that we're going to see more and more of these kind of activities. Certainly NASA is going that direction, and JAXA, I think is but the regulation needs to be updated to really help foster that, I think.
Yeah, and I might add, Mike, that unfortunately, a lot of the PPPs in the States are limited to U.S. companies, and so it's a little more challenging for non-U.S. entities to be a direct partner in the PPP. However, that said, there can be creative ways to become sort of a partner of the partner, a contributing partner, with a U.S. lead in a public-private partnership. So again, we got to be creative. Huh?
Thank you, everybody. So it's time to conclude this panel discussion. It's really honored to be with you guys, and it was a really productive discussion, I think. So I hope to see you again face-to-face somewhere in the world, maybe in the U.S. or Japan, and talk to each other again. Thank you very much for your time. All right, so
Thanks, everyone.
I'd like to get back to Shiga-san. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sato, for your great organization of the panel discussion. I think this discussion was impressive and insightful for all the participants today. So next is closing session. Today's event will soon come to an end. To conclude, I'd like to make an announcement to all of the participants. So please kindly look at the following slides. Feedback survey. We'd like you to share your feedback with us. After this event, we will send you an email with a link to a form where you can kindly share your feedback. Contact list. When registering for this event, we asked you if you'd like to share your contact information with other participants. To those of you who answered yes to that question, we will share your contact information with the other participants. Once the contact list has been finalized, we will send you an email. Cross Nihonbashi Global Hub 21 event. Cross Nihonbashi Global Hub 21 is planning a series of events throughout the year. The second event is scheduled to take place in April in Nihonbashi, Japan, as a face-to-face event. In addition, the third event in August will also be a face-to-face event planned at the NASA Ames Research Center, titled B2B Forum for Space Innovation. It is planned to be an exclusive face-to-face event for Japanese and U.S. companies at the NASA Ames site in California, held in conjunction with the Space Symposium, one of the world's largest space business meetings. We will provide an opportunity to match with major overseas space players all at once. Please look forward to Cross Nihonbashi Global Hub 21 future events. So that's all for today's event. Thank you very much to everyone who participated. See you at the next event, hopefully in person.